Welcome for the last episode of Adventures in Italian Opera with Fred Plotkin for this season. I believe it's our 8th year, Fred. And so we are getting ready for the 9th year. And actually, at the end of the conversation, Fred will make the official announcement of the guests that you can expect to meet here next year. And we also printed out the list for you to take on your way out. Also because our website is down, unfortunately. And sometimes when you face the hard truth that technology sometimes fails you, a good old piece of paper helps. And as you know, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome Fred back to the stage of the Casa. He's not only a precious colleague, but also a good friend personally. And even if I'm struggling to find every time to say something new, I think I've managed so far to tell you something new about Fred. The last thing I found out is that next September, he's going to lead one of the New York Times tours, and the tour is not going to have to do with music, but with food, and it's going to be a special tour of Sicily, a magnificent tour. I just saw the website of the tour, and it's really mouth-watering, but it's also very cultural because, as you know, in Italy and in Sicily in particular, food is culture. So if you have some time in September and some money to spend in that way, get to know Sicily better, and I think you couldn't hope in a better guide than Fred Plotkin. And as we normally do, I'm not going to announce and introduce Fred's guest. That's an honor that I leave to him. And so I'm just asking you to please welcome very warmly Fred Plotkin and Quinn Kelsey. Thank you.
Please sit. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, good evening. We're concluding another season, our 8th, and I will indeed announce the 9th season at the end of this evening. So those of you watching at home and those of you here, have a pen, have paper ready to write down the dates. I will speak slowly. You will ooh and ah with every artist that I mention, I promise. And speaking of ooh and ah, Quinn Kelsey is one of the greatest singers of his generation. And I don't say that because he's here and he's bigger than I am, but because he really, really is. And I heard him when he was quite young. You're still quite young, but I heard you when you were quite young in Chicago. I did not go and talk to him because I thought maybe this was a really good day. I have to hear this person again. And he was even better the next time I heard him. And I have many friends, as you know, in the opera world, and they all said to me, you want to keep an eye out and an ear out for Quinn Kelsey.
I just paid them all really well.
And, you know, any excuse for me to go to Italy, and I saw that he was appearing in Simone Boccanegra in Rome, which, as you know, is one of my 2 favorite Verdi operas. Riccardo Muti had never conducted it before. It was the last great Verdi opera he would conduct, or new great opera for him. And Quinn Kelsey was in the cast in a small role. And that's all I remember from that performance, plus a bit of Riccardo Muti, because he was sensational. So you're going to see a little bit of that tonight. And I just want you to understand, because I hear all the time people say, oh, there's no one good anymore. Right now, the cast in Lucia di Lammermoor, which will be at the Met again on the evening of May 5th and again on May 10th, is fabulous. Pretty Yende, Michael Fabiano, Quinn Kelsey, and others, but those 3 are of golden age quality. So I really don't want you to miss that. It's really that good. So get your tickets now or after this evening. And in the meantime, please welcome Quinn Kelsey. So I'm going to ask the obvious question that you've been asked many times. It's just one word, Hawaii.
Go.
You're from Hawaii. Go to Hawaii. I've never been. You are from Hawaii.
Yes.
And you are known as the Hawaiian Baritone because you're from Hawaii. And I, years ago, was offered a job that unfortunately I was not free to take because I had another engagement in February to come work at the Hawaii Opera Theater in Honolulu.
What year?
It was Don Giovanni. I don't remember the year.
Was it a long time ago, or was it recently?
You were an adult, but probably barely. And it was not when you were in. It was earlier. But what I liked about that notion, apart from Hawaii in February and that I love pineapple, is that Hawaii Opera Theater, the acronym is HOT. And that really sounded ideal to me, especially in February. Opera productions in Hawaii, because it really is so far from everything else, there's a tradition, I'm sure, but tell us about producing and appearing in opera in Hawaii.
Well, I guess one of the main. My father's an English teacher, so I have this curse of finding the right words. I guess one of the main things to understand about Hawaii is that it is in the middle of the Pacific, and so by default there is this huge idea of isolation. And in many ways, isolation is a curse, but it's also a wonderful blessing. I mean, the flora and fauna in Hawaii you find nowhere else in the world. Our state bird looks like a goose that you would find here and in the Midwest. And one of the theories is that it was some flock of geese who were blown so far off course that they flew out into the middle of the Pacific and then finally found a landmass where they could land and have become their own species. And they are now.
And they're called a Hawaii goose or what?
Yeah, well,
okay.
I mean, it's a specific Hawaiian name, but it's the state bird is this
Okay.
goose. But, well, there's no but, really. I've been away from Hawaii now 15 years exactly. And, it's allotted me a very specific and much broader perspective of the world, of the place where I'm from. Because in a lot of ways, I took Hawaii for granted. I never really took advantage of everything, never really appreciated everything as much as I could have. And then as soon as I left, I went, oh, right. But one of the strong things about Hawaii culture, I consider there to be two parts to the local culture, the Hawaiian culture and the Hawaii culture. The Hawaiian culture being the indigenous culture, and the Hawaii culture being the local culture, the mashup of all the ethnicities who have intermingled and intermarried over generations. And it's a culture like no other. I mean, you in the life of a local family, you hit upon so many different customs from all the peoples who first came to Hawaii in the very early 1900s as contract laborers. So, when you come to someone's home, everybody takes their shoes off, Japanese. Whenever you have some kind of celebration, big party, Hawaiian. When there's it's kind of negative. Whenever you tease someone about, if you're being hit on or courted by someone who's a lot older than you, that's very Filipino in a way. There's this whole part of Filipino culture. But you have all these different things, and everybody does them. And so it's so hard to tell, okay, are you really Caucasian? Are you Hawaiian? Are you, because everybody's a part of this culture. And it's such a positive thing that in a lot of ways in Hawaii, classical music and opera contend very rough. I mean, not roughly, but classical music and opera have a really hard time contending with the local culture, and it's not negative. It just is. Plus, too, that Hawaii, because of isolation, is so very, very, very young in its exposure to classical music and opera. So by default, people just haven't known classical music and opera long enough to find that appreciation that, for example, all of you have. And it exists, very much so. It's a very, very close-knit family. Everybody knows everybody else. You know everybody in the symphony. You know all of them who teach privately. You know all the local singers and you know everybody's jobs outside of going to the concert hall to perform, to get together and perform, because it's really tough to be just a symphony player, to be just a classical opera singer. And so everybody knows everybody else's jobs, who sings weddings, who sings at the hotels, who plays in their quartets and ensembles, who teaches. Everybody teaches. So it's a really, really interesting dynamic. And as I say, the only setback is that Hawaii is just so young in its appreciation of these art forms, and this is one of the main challenges that the opera company and the symphony have in reaching out to the local audiences and to get them to come to shows. So, I totally grew up in all of it. I saw it from the time I was in middle school all the way until college years, when I finally, had finished school and packed up boxes and suitcases and took my one-way ticket to Chicago. I'd always felt like I owed the classical opera community in Hawaii a lot, because I finished high school, I didn't know anything about where I was supposed to go next. Knew of Juilliard, Manhattan School, AVA, Curtis, in Indiana University, but had no clue how to take the next step. So I stayed home thinking, okay, I'll just go to the university, and then if something else better happens, then I can always transfer, and I haven't wasted any time. Turns out that was one of the best decisions I ever made, was staying home. Got a really great church job that allowed me some kind of side money, to go to a big audition once in a blue moon, to pay for an accompanist for that recital that I was doing outside of school, while helping me bone up on my sight singing skills, singing with other people 2 times a week. It was great. And then 2 oratorios every year. And then at the same time, the opera company, hot. I have a great anecdote about it later if we have time. Started their own little studio. And I met the music staff for San Francisco Opera Center. I met the guy who would be my boss in Chicago, the Young Artist Program. I met Marlene Amalis through my boss in Chicago.
Being a teacher, Marlene Amalis.
Yes,
singer.
the teacher. Yes, singer, teacher. Meeting her, networked with all the people here in Manhattan and in Philadelphia. So as soon as I finished school, I went to Maryland, finished Maryland, went home to graduate.
Maryland being San Francisco.
Yeah, the big summer program out of San Francisco, excuse me. And then as soon as I finished that, graduated, packed up my bags, did one big show at home in Hawaii, and went to Chicago. I mean, the transition could not have been more perfect.
Is that the first time you saw snow?
It was.
And what was, because Honolulu, Chicago is very different from Honolulu, San Francisco.
Well, Honolulu, Chicago at the end of March. Yeah. You know, I took all the long sleeve, long pants sort of clothing that I had. And it was cold when I got into Chicago at the end of March. But I vividly remember this one day right in mid-April. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, and it had dumped a foot of snow. And I'm looking out my window going, what do I do now? Open my closets and just put on everything that I owned and went outside in the cold and going, you know, and I get to work and everybody's just laughing at me and I'm like, give me a break. It's my first time in Chicago ever, okay?
When I think of Hawaii and Hawaiian music, I think often of a choral tradition and of the harmonies. It's not many places in the United States where there is that kind of ancient choral tradition. Did you grow up surrounded by that, and did you learn harmony and harmonics in part from singing native music?
I'll do one better.
Yeah.
Because I was talking about this with someone recently. I feel like those of Pacific Island descent have a leg up on everyone else who, in terms of those who want to get into singing, because all the Pacific Island peoples have a solid oral history. Everything was communicated through chants and through singing, and so, you know, it's no wonder why one of the community college teachers on Oahu kept churning out these classes where the majority of them had some kind of Pacific Island background and were these phenomenal natural talents. And the only problem was that one of the other main parts of that heritage is strong familial roots. And so none of them could ever break away. You know, they'd get to that next step and they could never take it because it meant such a huge disconnect from their families. And I had the same problem. But I also had, excuse me, for those of you who don't know, my mother is classically trained. So my sister and I were basically born into this. And so I just had, I had it in my blood, I had it in my bones. You know, this draw to singing and music that I couldn't always explain, but it was there and I could do it. I was never self-conscious about it. But as I say, I feel like because of my heritage, because of what's in my blood, it just made it all that easier because of what, you know, what came from my ancestors, what I absorbed from them. And yeah, it's kind of in a way like I cheated, you know.
Benefited.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. One last Hawaii question, because I don't know, I've not yet been to Hawaii. As I approach my old age, I think it's time for me to go, and because apparently they treat their elders with respect in Hawaii.
Well, doesn't everybody?
No, the Italians do. But I think of Hawaii as having, and I want you to confirm or deny this, an ancient system of gods like one finds in operas. Gods and myths and characters and personages who are part of the frame of reference for local people, the way people in Norway or Iceland or Greece may have something similar.
Very much so.
Give us a brief explanation of what that system of gods and personages might be in Hawaii.
Brief?
Could we do a Hawaiian ring cycle, for example?
You know what?
Is there a chief god and a strong goddess?
Well, so instead of one singular figure, you have Earth Mother and Sky Father types, Papa and Wakea, and then after that you have 5 next in line, because I wouldn't really consider them secondary of sorts. You have 5 main gods. No, I'm going to forget one. Ku, Lono, Kanaloa. There are 5, I swear. That's what happens when you're away from home for 15 years. But there are five gods who represent, all aspects of daily life, and then after that, the best way to explain the next stage is that you have family gods, personal family gods, and they are represented by different flora and fauna. And so, for example, I believe mine to be a shark. And the funny thing is that there have been times when you live in Hawaii, you got to get in the water. But there have been times when I've seen sharks in the water. Like if I'm in the water here, the shark was near the back door, and you see those the dorsal and the tail fins come up, and you go, that's not a dolphin. and I never felt, anxious. It never freaked me out that I needed to get out of the water at that point, as you would otherwise expect to react. Get out of the water, get out of the water. But this is the basic breakdown of the deity types in Hawaiian culture before Western contact.
So Papa would be a baritone. Yes.
Probably a bass.
All right.
Yeah.
But we can make... I'm working on this Hawaiian ring. And in the Hawaiian equivalent of the Rhine, we would have the Hawaiian Rhine maidens and the shark going through.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No, that's easy.
All right. We're going to work on this.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to do. I mean, you could find different gods to just, I wonder who Donner would be.
Well, part of why I'm mentioning this is because, and this is Adventures in Italian Opera, I promise, Stefano, because I worked on a ring cycle a number of years ago where they hired me as a consultant that was set in the desert of Arizona, New Mexico, and it was done in outdoor places, and we had Native American gods replacing Wotan and Brunhilde and so on. And so I think we're going to do this in Hawaii. All right?
I'm in.
Ring of Magic Fire will be pineapple. I'm there. Okay.
You see where he's going, huh?
But anyway, the first thing when one hears Quinn Kelsey sing, and there are many things, but the first thing that one inevitably is struck by, and you have your ancestors to thank for this, is the absolute beauty of his voice. And so we're just going to have a brief clip of you in your first role at the Met, Chaunard, in Bohème. It's a brief clip because he didn't get to do much on his own. Chaunard, basically, his big moment is that he's the one who discovers that Mimi has died.
Yeah.
A spirata. But this is from Act 2, where everybody is fighting over how will we pay the bill. And it's just a brief view, so we're going to look at it now on the screen.
Great.
Cielo
Set up number 2, please. So my question is, the Met had been doing that since 1981.
81.
December of 81, because I was actually, when I worked at the Met, that was the first show I worked on.
Wow.
And it was directed by Franco Zeffirelli, who I had worked with in Italy, so therefore knew him. And Zeffirelli does very few things in a small, modest way. And so my question really is, in a production that by then was 30-plus years old, that the company had in its DNA, that all the troops knew where to march, children who were in the children's chorus in 1981 were playing old people by 2008. And it's just been there. And it's a wonderful machine, but it's a machine. And when you're kind of dropped in, and this is your Met debut, how did you find your way through all of that? Were there enough rehearsals? Because the Met does it so often that they don't rehearse it as much as certain operas.
I mean, it's everything that you think it is. You know, here I was stepping out onto that stage. You know, I mean, 12 years after I graduated from high school, here I was, Met debut, pinching myself every day. You know, yep, I'm still awake. Okay, good. I mean, it's everything you think. That what am I doing here? Sure, I'm going to remember all the staging and everything, but oh my God, it's the Met. There was enough staging. Whether they knew because they were putting somebody brand new in or not, it was enough. You know, otherwise, you know, we staged for 1 week this Lucia before we reopened. What else have I done?
At the Met?
No. Well, yeah, but specifically something that was really short. I've had productions where it's basically a week because they've already opened, a lot like this Lucia, and so they didn't think they needed so much time to get it back on its feet, except some of us have never done it before. No, it was very hair-raising in many ways, but you know, at that point, here's your opportunity. You can decide to walk through the door or not, and if you don't, it'll probably close on you, and you won't get the second chance. So you take a deep breath, and you go, and you make your entrance, and you sing with everybody else, and you try to make sure that you don't forget anything. I almost didn't get to make that debut.
Why was that?
Because management, well, as you could see, I didn't necessarily look like I was a starving artist. You know, I come from very healthy stock. You know, we never go without. Yeah, I'd gained a bunch of weight, and management didn't like the look of it, and so they were gonna buy me out and get somebody else. And thankfully, the conductor of that production of the production that point, Nicola Luisotti, who just finished up his tenure as music director in San Francisco, saved me. Said, "No, I like his voice. I want to keep him." And as it turns out, ended up conducting my San Francisco debut that fall, the same year. My Covent Garden debut, and my Bastille Opera debut.
Also, you're living on baguettes in Paris. Baguettes can be fattening.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yes, they can.
That's my answer. I have a culinary answer to everything.
But I mean, there was nothing like it. You know, the Met is the mecca for opera singers. You know, you have made it if you get on that stage, and You hear that music, you hear the thickness of that sound, and it's one thing to be in the audience, but it's, in a lot of ways, it's totally different to be standing on the stage and hearing it all around you, hearing everyone singing all around you, and you damn well better recognize it and know exactly where you come in, because it sounds great and it feels really great, but you cannot relax, you cannot be lazy at all, because it'll just fly right by.
I have a couple of theories about the character of Chouinard. Often I work with young artists, and one of their entry roles, if they're a baritone, is Chouinard. And on the page, there's less to tell us who he is and what he's about. But I think that he has a very interesting backstory, just based on what I can glean, that he's more successful with women than the other young men are in this group. He always is out somewhere, and he's a musician, and while one of them is painting and he has no inspiration, and one of them is trying to write an article and he has no inspiration, and one of them is a philosopher, so all he has is inspiration. Chouinard is out, and where is he? He comes in, he has food, he's happy, he looks fulfilled, and I just see him coming from a very different place, and I'm not joking here, which is why I think that Puccini and his librettists decided it should fall to him to break the news about Mimi dying, because he gets the shock in ways that the other three more anxious, depressive types wouldn't.
Right.
Because for him to see Marcello Espirata, is shocking. And I don't remember his name, but there was a young man who played it in Bohème this year, a tall redhead, and he was very handsome and happy-go-lucky. But when his face registered Mimi's death, he went ashen. His face just sort of dropped, and because he really got what that's about. So he's a very good character. My last performance when I worked at the Met, I decided would be Bohème, and none other than Thomas Hampson was Chouinard. So there's a great tradition. Yeah.
Who was Marcello?
I'm trying to recall. It was someone good, but it but it was Luciano Pavarotti, Morella Freni, Carlos Kleiber conducting, Barbara Daniels, and it escapes me the Marcello, but Tom Hampson.
Fred.
It was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of my very favorite operas, as you know, is Simone Boccanegra, and I will travel far to see it. And when the Rome opera season opened in 2012 in December, and I heard that Riccardo Muti was undertaking this opera for the first time, and Julian, you're setting up number 2, and that Gabriele Adorno would be Francesco Melli, and Boccanegra would be the Romanian George Petean, Maria or Amelia would be Maria Gresto, who was sat in that chair. A very, very good cast, Muti conducting, and then I saw that the bad guy, Paolo, really one of the worst people in all of opera, is one of the people with the most beautiful voices in opera, Quinn Kelsey. I thought, well, I have to go. And with due respect to your colleagues, and I would say it to them even if they were here, you really blew everybody off the stage. You did. So I want the audience here in the theater and those of you watching at home to watch some of this performance, and this is 6 years ago, and he's gotten a million times better since then, but just the impact. And then I'm going to ask you about Muti's involvement in developing that character.
Don't you worry.
Okay, so here we go. Selection.
Quei due vedesti, sì, li traggi tosto dal carcelloro per l'ambito assoso che questa chiave schiuderà, intesi. me stesso maledetto. E l'anatema mi segue ancora, e l'ora ancor ne trema. Vilipeso, reietto, al Senato, da Genova, qui vibro il volto far prima di fuggire, qui libro la sorte tua voce, in quest'ansia estrema. Tu che m'offendi e che mi devi il trono, quest'ora fatale. Qui ti stilla una lenta tragonia, arma un assassino, scelga morte sua via, lei tosco e di prigioniero in colloco Madruci, nelle stanze del noce, e favella del Paolo, e poi sguardi santuci, io Solorio che cela sin te, e tu m'ascolta e bravi, al cimento preparati dei guelfi la schiera, sì, ma vano fiatando ardimento, questo va già porrito da me, quando voi la morite, la presta nuovo scempio, tendi un agguato, ti fiesco la testa, il tiranno segnata non ha. Io ti insegno vittoria. Acqua d'oro, lucidando mentre li dorme. Osia fiesco proporre un misfatto. Osia fiesco proporre un misfatto. Tu rifiuti. Sì, la tua carta te va. Udisti, vil disegno, Amelia dunque mai tu non amasti. Che dici? E qui, qui Amelia, e le vegliardo segno e anni dilettanze. Oscuro de voi, che fai? Di qui ogni varco t'è conteso, ardisci il colpo, o sepoltura avrai tra queste mura.
When Francesco Melli comes, I'll let him sing that part. So, working with Riccardo Muti, who is a famous Verdian, doing his last new Verdi opera. I always wondered why he waited so long to do it. But it's not about Muti tonight, it's about you. What did you learn?
What did I learn? A lot of people, as you can expect, revere him. I mean, I don't have to tell you how terribly intelligent he is, how much power and respect he commands. But there was a humanity about him as well. He always, I mean, he demanded everyone's attention right here. And there was wonderful reason for it. You know, to have that kind of control meant that any one performance was an instant masterpiece because everything fell into place. There wasn't ever, you know, a dead air kind of moment. Everything short of perfect from someone like him. But then, so in rehearsal, for example, and you always had to be really close to him. And as soon as he came out of the pit, you had to get up and you had to go over and ask him, Maestro, you know, tutto bene? Do you need anything? Everything, you know? Because when I got there, I would go sit off in the back, and somebody came over and said, "Yeah, you should go and you sit close." And then as soon as he finishes the rehearsal, you go and you ask him what he thinks. Okay. So he'd have everybody like this, you know, and everybody's on edge. And then he would tell a joke. And you went, and it was a good joke. And so you laughed. And then you went, oh, wow. And you felt, for example, everyone in the pit go, you know, in a good way, that you gave him all your attention, but then, oh, suddenly he's flesh and blood. And so, okay, you can afford to just relax just that little bit. But he still had all the control that he needed, and there was something so brilliant about it. My poor colleagues, not all of them, but there were those who found it very difficult to pay attention to their own staging, to their own character, because they were just glued to him all the time. And he hated that. You know, he hated that. Okay, I won't say hate, but he really didn't like, and I you know, to the point where I would overhear him commenting to his assistant that, you know, yes, he is who he is, but get on with it. You know, we have work to do. We have things we have to accomplish, and some of my colleagues were just frozen. You know, they're supposed to be doing things across the stage, and they're just watching him the whole time. And I mean, count my lucky stars that I just didn't have that problem, you know. And he came up to me one day, and he came up to me, you know, and this was before I was going and checking up with him, and he walked all the way deep back into the house. And I see him coming right for me. There's nobody else sitting there, so I jump up. Si, maestro. And he says, okay, after the pausa, you go. Okay. And we start over again, and I go and I do everything. And then as soon as, you know, he decides rehearsal's over, and he picks up the microphone, and he calls for rehearsal to be over, and I go sprinting off the stage, down the stairs, and so I can come back up to be right there for him. And he walks up to me, you know, and he's like here on me, right? And he takes his finger and he pokes me right in the chest. He goes, "You will sing the premiere." And I was like, "Okay, maestro, va bene." And in my head, I'm going, he poked me in the chest. I'm never going to watch it ever again. Do you know what I mean? Muti. Woo. We were in rehearsal, and he's rehearsing the very beginning of Act 1 with the soprano aria. and he starts the orchestra from nothing, and the effect is just gorgeous. But he starts them from nothing and just kind of trickles on. And oh my God, you hear somebody talking like on a cell phone, like somebody's voice on a cell phone, and you feel everybody go. And he stops, and he's got the God mic right there on the podium. So he goes, "Silencio," and you're like, oh, that he had to say it once. And I feel everybody behind me jump up and go running off to see what's going on. And he starts again from nothing, and again you hear this sound. And you're like, oh my God, you didn't hear that the first time? So he stops, he grabs a mic again, you're like, oh. Silencio. Okay, that's it. You heard that. Shut up. Turn it off, whatever. He starts again. You hear it again. He's pissed now. He puts the baton and grabs it. Silencio, and swears, and I'm not going to repeat it.
Did he swear in Italian?
Yes.
You can repeat it.
Live streaming, that's great. You know what Quinn Kelsey said on the internet? So anyway, silencio. Ah! And I wanted to dive under my seat, and I was just like, ooh. You found out later that there was a protest going on outside, and it was loud enough that it made it into the house, but still we were just like, you know, everybody's about ready to have a heart attack.
Yeah.
But it's that he understood, obviously, the kind of power that he wielded, but he also understood how important it was to not be overwhelming, to not you know, give the singers a coronary, you know, in order to get through the piece. And he had so many great singers: Maria Grestad, Geza Petian, the Fiesco's a Russian guy who lives in Italy, and he was just here for something. Belozelsky. Mm-hmm. He's a guy that Muti. There are this group of younger singers that Muti loves and uses them.
Was he and Louisa Miller just now?
Me?
No.
No.
Okay.
No, it was something earlier because I just saw him when I started rehearsals.
Okay.
Anyway, there's no one like him, and he's slightly different from another type of musician, but it's the same outcome, that they know their craft so well that they make you want to do better. You know, even if it's something that you know well, you want to find some new way to update that excellence because of how good they are. And this is totally what he was about, and you know, very calm and very collected, and you know, made my point to go and just a little bit every time. But you know, I mean, the end result was always something so wonderful, and again, lucky stars that I covered Boca Negra and sang Paulo in Chicago, and had planned, had my flights and everything, that I was going to go home to Hawaii for 3 weeks for Thanksgiving, and my folks were so mad that I had to cancel and say, look, I had not one but 2 recommendations from people in the business who said, yes, Quinn Kelsey should do it, and I couldn't not go. And you know, Rome for the first time, and parked in a hotel, and because I didn't have the job when I first got there. I had to sing for Maestro first for him to sign off on me. And then once he did, then I could come to rehearsals, and then I could go and hunt for a place to stay that wasn't grossly expensive. But there you go.
I'm just remembering something from that time. I went to see Quinn backstage. He actually came out of the theater. We met in front of the theater. And I was asking him how he was settling in Rome. Do you remember what you asked me?
No.
How do you do laundry in Italy?
Oh, yeah.
It just came back to me. And I tried to explain that the washing machines, the temperature is not so hot because Italians understand garments and they don't want to cook the garments. And then you have to hang it out. And I said, you have a clothesline outside. and I don't think you did actually.
No? Okay.
And so I had to sort out where to find a place that this could be dried, his clothing could be dried. And I remember he said, but my shirts are bigger than the Italians are used to.
Yeah. I can wash like 3 shirts in one load, and that's it.
And so I was thinking that, future great artist of the world, and I go to see him. What does he ask me about? Laundry.
Laundry.
Yeah. Julian, please set up number 4. When Riccardo Muti came to the Met, he only conducted once, and he's said he's not conducting there again. I hope he does. It was in Attila, and Quinn was not in Attila, but he sang in the famous duet at the Richard Tucker Gala in the same year, 2012.
Yep, same year.
With Ildar Abdrazakov as Attila the Hun to you, and Quinn as Ezio. And Ezio is a good guy, unlike Paolo Albiani in Boccanegra, who's a terrible person. And Quinn sings my favorite line in all of opera in this scene. And it'll go on my tombstone. Avrai tu l'universo, resti l'Italia a me. You can have the universe, but let Italy be mine. So, Julian, if you please, we're going to watch in concert the duet from Attila with Quinn as Ezio.
Attila, nobile mesto, Ezio qui, fiadero, Iono ed essa, l'altissimo guerriero, degno nemico d'Attila scudo di Roma e vanto. Attila, a te soltanto la chiedi o parlare di te. Straporgimi, non già di pace, spero tuoi letti. Tormentera, Ezio, in tua man vuol dar. Tardo per gli anni e tremulo, e il regnatore d'Oriente siede un'imbelle giovine sul trono d'Occidente. Tutto sarà disperso quando mi scade, tutto sarà disperso. Avrai tu l'universo, resti l'Italia, a me. Oh, le due più valido, e traditore spergiuro,
Verdi was great at duets for baritone and other people. And by the way, Julian, set up number 5, please. I noticed that the orchestral part comes basically to a halt when you say "Avrai tu l'universo resti l'Italia me," because Verdi was saying to the people of Italy who were under foreign domination, this is how we're going to rebel. You can have the universe, but let Italy be mine. And I'd never quite noticed the degree to which there's no orchestra at that moment.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's a solo voice, and that's it. Have you ever sung the role in a production? It's not done very often.
I did it that summer.
Where?
In San Francisco.
Attila, okay.
Yeah. No, it was a great progression because I sang it that summer in San Francisco, and then got the call to be a part of the Tucker Gala. And what are we going to do? Well, why don't we do that duet? Perfect. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wish other people did it. Oh, it's a great part.
It is a great opera. It's a hard sing for, I forgot her name, Oda Bella. Is that the female? Verdi, early in his career, wrote very tough roles for sopranos. And that's why we don't see many of these Verdi operas. The music for bass, for baritone, for tenor is fine, but he wrote voice-wrecking roles for sopranos in Nabucco and Attila and a couple of these other early works. Now, those of you who know that I wrote a book called Opera 101, which is a standard text in America for learning opera, know that the first opera I teach in the book is Rigoletto. It is the perfect opera. I won't say the best opera because there are many best operas, but it is a perfect opera with no extra notes. People I know who know nothing about opera, I take them to Rigoletto, I tell them the story, I say, don't read the titles, just listen to the music and watch the performance, and you cannot help but be overwhelmed by it in a very good way. And Quinn is the best Rigoletto I've seen in decades. Mm-hmm. And I studied with Tito Gobi, so I studied with someone who knew Rigoletto. And he just is. You are. That's it. Sorry. And
out of here.
And when I went last summer to San Francisco to see it, primarily because I had heard he was so good at it in Zurich and Paris, and I didn't see that, and I had a talk to give in California, so I worked it in, and I don't cry very often at the opera anymore, but I was not the only one in tears. He was in tears. I had never seen a Rigoletto burst into tears in the last scene, so my first question is, how do you sing when you're crying? Seriously, technically, how do you sing when you're crying?
It has to be a really fine balance because, as he says, if you let your emotions run away with you, there is just no way. That lump in your throat thing, that doesn't work for singing. So it's always really tough if you feel the need to want to just let the emotions take over, but you can't really, because how we all say, oh, it choked me up. It's exactly what happens, and letting the sound come out doesn't work. So it's always a gamble when singers want to let those emotions take over, because you just can't ever let them completely take over. You have to keep them under control. And so in a way you can almost feel like you're cheating the audience, like you're lying to them, because you're still kind of under control of yourself. Whereas you'd rather just let it happen, but it's not possible. You can't do that because the singing just doesn't work otherwise.
But physically, technically, how do you restrain the tears and the choking up? Everybody's different. Personally, I've always had an ability
in not so many words, I've always had an ability for acting. I've always been able to find ways to convince people that I was doing things that I wasn't really doing. And so this is, you know, I've turned it into a great tool in my character building on stage in different operas, and Rigoletto is one of those where it's so easy to just lose yourself in these terrible emotions. But I can still personally find a way to really let them look as though they're completely drowning me, but I still find that razor sharp balance between total control and just complete disaster. And in being able to hone that skill, it's only made my own personal performances that much more fulfilling.
So without revealing a secret, you have a means of summoning tears. Ava Martone, who I wish I could have come here sometime, but she's not been to the States for a while, is a fabulous actress in addition to being a great singer and a rather powerful person. She could beat you at arm wrestling very easily. She was I'm not kidding, the 1960 Hungarian Olympic gold medal women's volleyball team. She was the captain of the team. So that's before she became an opera singer. But she once told me that her secret for crying was to think of the absolute worst thing that ever happened to her that she still had never resolved, and she could stand on a stage, and I remember she did this once in La Gioconda, and the tears came flooding, but she kept singing. And I asked her how she does that, and she says, I don't think in my throat, I think in my head. And I don't understand the technique aspect of that.
But that's,
yeah.
I agree with that totally.
Yeah.
Keep it in your head,
Yeah.
and don't let it come down into your throat. And it works every time.
Yeah. So, Julian, we're going to have number 5, and then right after that, if you would set up number 5A, and we will stay where we are to watch 5A right after 5. And they're self-explanatory, both from very different Rigolettos. Okay?
Thank you so much. I'm overwhelmed. Thank you very much for having us being here tonight. I sing a lot of Rigoletto now. I'm very happy about that, but you know, everybody wants to hear Act 2. You know, why can't I sing Act 1? That's a good one too. It's a lot of fun. So, instead of Act 2, we're going to do Parisiamo.
Parisiamo, io la lingua e gli hai il pugnale, l'uomo savia che ride e quel che spegne. Oh, che ridere, il retaggio d'ogni uomo è tolto, il pianto. Questo padrone mio, giovin, giocondo, si possente, bello, sonnecchiando mi dice: fa chiarire, buffone, forzarmi deggio e farlo. Oh, dannazione! Odia voi, cortigiani schernitori, quanta in mordervi ho gioia, sei Nicolason, perché Gian vostra è solo. Pensiero perché conturba la mente mia, mi coglierà sventura, anno e follia.
Julian, set up number 7, please. So, a few questions.
Okay.
One is, your Italian diction is so really very good, and most singers, even Italian singers, it's not that good. Italians more than most, but really, there are Italians who I cannot make out what they're saying. Where did you acquire, number 1, the desire to be clear in your Italian, but number 2, where did you acquire the skill?
As I say, my sister and I were born into singing and music, but at the same time, it was all very informal. You know, we were never drug on the side and pushed into a room, and mom sitting at the piano going, "Okay, we're going to do these lessons." And in that way, I think it gave the two of us an advantage because it helped to foster an appreciation for singing and music rather than, rather than a disgust or a distaste for it because, oh, here we go, we're doing it again. That instead, and I don't know if our mother understood what she was doing, in presenting music to us in this way, but I don't know if there was any better way to do it. In order for the two of us to love music and singing as much as we do, that we were just, we were forced into singing in her choirs, and so that wasn't always the most fun thing to do, while we'd rather be out playing with our friends. Nope, we have music to learn for Sunday. Oh, Mom. But informally, indirectly, my sister and I learned tons of musicianship. One of them being diction, and it wasn't. Again, it was very indirect. It was just, no, I want to hear that more, and it was a lot of mimicking and repeating back what she wanted. And so the fostering that importance of diction came very, very early in general. And it was a skill that we were taught, that I know that we both then applied to other languages. And in a way, Italian is the strongest because growing up in the opera course in Hawaii, Italian was what was most produced. And so you just by default, we grew our familiarity with how the language worked over the French or over the German. I think by default, singers take their mother tongue for granted, because it's the language you know the most, because it's the language with which you are the most familiar with how everything works. You go on cruise control with it, and in a lot of ways, English is very much like that. It's the one that you think you know the most, and so you pay the least amount of attention to it. Whereas the French, German, and Italian, the Russian every once in a while, the Czech every now and again, is not normal. So by default, you give it that much more attention. And so I am a Verdi baritone. I've only, 95% of my repertoire is Italian. And so it behooves me to really make sure that, well, short of fluency, that I know how that language works. You know, it's my goal to be fluent in Italian and German because of the fact that I sing so much Italian, and when I'm outside of North America, I work mostly in German-speaking countries. So.
And we'll probably be singing some Wagner, I would guess, in the future.
In the future.
All right. When I do Adventures in German Opera, a very brief class.
Very brief.
You'll come back for that. But I avoided a term that you just used, and it's Verdi baritone, because you are a Verdi baritone, and in fact, I also heard you this year, 2018, in Il Trovatore. I went to Washington and heard you in Don Carlo, and we're going to be hearing you at the Met this fall as Amonasro in Aida, and Giorgio Germont with Diana Damrau and Juan Diego Flores, new production conducted by Yannick Nazé-Sagan of La Traviata. So this year, at least, you're a Verdi baritone. Mm-hmm. And what does that mean, a Verdi baritone?
In my experiences, Verdi had, I don't exactly know what it is, but he had a specific idea for the type of baritone that he wanted to sing his music. And it was much more, in my humble opinion, than a regular lyric baritone, in that, you know, as I try to think of the Don Carlo and the Trovatores and the Traviatas and the Aidas, it has to be a bigger voice. It has to be a heftier voice, because the music is much more strenuous. It requires a different color in order to completely embody the music for which he wrote in the baritone Fach. You know,
Fach meaning group of roles that are congenial to a particular type of voice.
Yeah, right.
We're not cursing here.
Yet. Yeah, you know, where a Verdi baritone could sing Verdi and everything else, but a lyric baritone couldn't go the other way, because in my humble opinion, it just requires so much more voice for the Verdi singing, and no, that's it. Yeah.
So now we're good, because we only have a little bit more time left, and there's a topic that I want to bring up, and Julian will have set up number 7, and then right after you'll play number 8, but I want to mention what these contain. I went to Toronto. You can tell I go to hear this guy wherever. I'm building up my frequent flyer miles thanks to Quinn Kelsey.
You're welcome.
And I went to Toronto not only to hear him, but to hear my dear friend Ferruccio Furlanetto, who had never been asked to sing Don Quixote here in New York. And I've seen him do it in San Diego, and I've seen him do it in Toronto. And who should be Sancho Panza? A very different kind of role.
Very.
But Quinn Kelsey. And Ferruccio, after, said to me, as he sort of embraced Quinn from above, "This is my baby." And he kept referring to you as my baby, and in effect said to me that this is the greatest singer of his generation, and he loves everything about Quinn. But what I want to do is, after showing a brief little trailer that the Canadian Opera Company created to announce the production, we're then going to hear Ferruccio Furlanetto singing Fiesco in Paris, and we're going to talk about Ferruccio after. Okay. So if we would. Well, I don't understand the production, but with the formal modern clothing and the big picture of him, it looked like a campaign billboard in Genoa. But it doesn't matter. The singing, tell me, because you understand it better than we do, what was happening in that singing.
It all comes down to. I mean, I don't have to tell you how you all felt. I don't have to bring it up again. You know, I can feel how much we were all just, you know, caught and hooked in. And that's basically what it is. It's about figuring out whatever it takes to connect with every one of you in the audience in that way, so that when it's done, you're not sure if you should clap or just relish that moment and relish the silence that comes off of it. You know, because I personally get a feeling like I don't know if I want to sully that silence with my applause, as much as I want to show him that I approve so much of what he just did. That it's a feeling of wanting of complete connection with him, knowing exactly what he's feeling, not sure that you want to have an opinion, that you want it to keep going. And this is what I feel is so important about this art form, is that you have to connect with the audience. You have to find some way for them to know exactly what you're feeling, and then it's up to you to decide how you want to respond. If you want to sit there and just sort of meditate, if you want to jump up and down and cheer, you know, whatever it is, that we help you to feel something, to think something, to have some sort of reaction that only you can have about what we've just done. And that's the most that we can do, you know, to help you to enjoy it in your own way. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to enjoy it the same way as someone else sitting next to you, but that you get out of it what, you know, what's valuable to you. And that's it. That the color of his voice, that the strength in the delivery of the text, you know, reaches out to you and takes hold of you and affects you and makes you, you know, leaves some impression on you. And that's what we all hope for.
I would only add that I noticed something in his performance that I noticed in your two pieces we saw from Rigoletto, namely that often when the character has a thought, many, if not most, opera singers just sing what's written in the moment. But his face in this aria and your face in both the concert Rigoletto and the opera Rigoletto that we saw, your face, your eyes, had the realization a split second before you said what the character was saying, which made it clear that you and Ferruccio were playing the role fully. And many singers don't do that. I invite you to watch singers, and you'll see that most of them, we love them, sing what's written. Certain few singers completely embody the roles. And one of the joys for me of watching you and Ferruccio in Don Quixote with you as Sancho Panza was not all the comedy scenes, but his death scene. Because yes, you're a good Rigoletto when Gilda dies, but you were an amazing Sancho Panza when Ferruccio as Don Quixote died in your arms. It was a beautiful thing to watch. I hope that you guys get to do that again.
I hope so.
I hope that you get to do maybe Rigoletto to his Spadafucile,
No, he wouldn't do that anymore. Definitely.
In concert?
Maybe.
Okay.
Definitely Boca Negra.
Okay, Boca Negra. No, I want to cast you guys together for the next 10 years.
Don Carlo.
Don Carlo, fine. Yeah, all right. So I know that many of you, when I announced this season and I said that Quinn Kelsey would be the last artist of the year, said, who? You now know who. And I really want to thank you for sharing with us the person that I've known and the artist that I've known maybe ahead of most other people. And I'm very happy that more people will get to discover you. And if anyone ever says to me they're no good artists anymore, so thank you, Quinn.
My pleasure.